Hey everybody, this is Damian Skinner and welcome to another episode. I love that you're here. I'm recording from home today, so I hope the sound is all right. We have thunderstorms going on, so hopefully we don't lose power. But today I have such a special treat for you. My buddy and good friend, Max. How are you, man?
Buddy, thanks for having me on, partner. I always love to have a creative conversation.
Oh, right. I know. And by the way, I'm just going to start with a plug. I got caught up with what you're doing with your podcast where you're having creative conversations. Dude, it's awesome. Very cool.
Well, like when you reached out to me, I was like, well, this is oddly enough up my alley.
Yeah.
What do you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's not a stretch, is it? Right.
No, not at all. I like being a guest. This is great.
Yeah, well, you're good at it. Everybody, this is Max. He is artist extraordinaire. You're going to have to sit here for a second while I do this. I got to tell you the story. So obviously, if you're watching or listening to this podcast, this is because of Wonderment and what we do with kids and the Wonderment universe and all that. I was sitting in a parking lot, eating dumplings, just going through TikTok, and I came across this guy. Hello, my friends. And I was like, who is this dude? And I started watching, and his work melted my brain. I mean, Valhalla doors, Hobbit doors, all this incredible stuff. Now, I've never said this in a podcast before, but if you have not seen Max work, you need to pause this, look at the link down below, and go look at his work before we do the podcast.
Critical part of placing all of them. Everyone has an eye for design.
Yeah, so I knew you guys weren't going to go look. I just didn't trust you. Look at this. Insane. Yes, dude. It's alive. Oh, I need that for my bathroom. It'll put in... Yes, exactly. It'll put in perspective what we're talking about. All right. So, but I did something that I've always told people to do, and sometimes I just forget to do it. I just like, man, I love this guy. I love his energy. I'm just going to reach out. And I just mentioned something about, hey, I help people with merchandise or something like that. And I think a day or two later, we were on the phone talking, and it was just Mach speeds. Like we were
electric.
Yes, absolutely. And I met you, and of course now your wife, by the way. Congrats. Freshly married off the market.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a wild ride, and yeah, it's been wonderful.
Yeah. Well, you're going through a cool time of just transition and all these things. So we're going to get into a lot of that. But again, pause this, go look at his work, and then don't get distracted. Don't go to anybody else's stuff. We don't care right now. Come right back to us.
Well, you're far too kind, buddy.
Well, it is truly amazing work. And, you know, when I go away from seeing your work for a little bit, you know, and I go down other rabbit holes and obsess over other things, when I come back to your work, it's like, oh my God, it's just... And I want the audience to understand, like, from a wonderment perspective, I only know a handful of artists that have the ability and the heart to capture that sense of wonder in their art. And
okay,
dude, you do it in spades, man. And so again, I'm going to stop the love fest, but seriously,
you're too sweet. You're going to rot my teeth, man.
I know, dude. Your work, it speaks to me personally. It speaks to me as a child. It speaks to my mission. It's just the best, dude. I love it.
Well, and that was like the initial desire. So well, I'm sure we're going to dive into all of that.
Yeah, let's go, man.
Damian, that means the world to me. Thank you, buddy.
Good, dude. Absolutely. I mean it. You know, I'm one of those guys that it's one of my love languages, so to speak, to send people TikToks, right? I'm that guy. You'll get 40 from me in a night, you know, kind of a thing. I have shared your work with so many people, and the statements are always kind of the same. It's always first, holy crap, look at the work. But then I always get follow-up statements about you in particular. And I've talked with you and known you long enough. I know you're like most artists, you get uncomfortable with too much loving. I'm not just here to make you feel really, really uncomfortable.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up out of this here pretty quick. But the thing that people say is it's your heart, and that's why I wanted to have you on this podcast. I have a sneaky suspicion, and I'm being dishonest. We've done an Artist Way class, so it's not a suspicion. I've heard your story, and I know. I want to talk about how someone like you came about. Like, quickly tell your story of how you got into blacksmithing and how you started and how it grew, and just your general. But what I'm really wanting to get into is how you keep your heart in a place that's receptive and open to the art that you wind up creating.
Woof.
I know. So that's a lot. So let's just start with how you got to the party, right? Like, how did you get into this?
Yeah. So, first, found the door. No, but
Yeah.
So I was always creative. I was always creating things. I was always like, we kind of talked before about like making little stick boats and sending them downstream when it was pouring rain. And I was always in a state of imagination because my reality kind of sucked. There was good moments. I feel like no matter how hard it is, childhood is still going to be fun. Kids are good at having fun, And so I spent a lot of time in my head. And, in like right in like freshman year of high school, that's when you're starting to realize like, oh boy, like I can't do school. I need to find a trade. Quick.
Yeah.
So I got into welding. And I took to it like, great. It was wonderful. And then I realized, holy crap, I can take all this creative juice I've been spending my entire life cultivating and, pulling sap from my like life tree kind of a thing. I've got this huge accumulation. I got barrels of this stuff. Well, I can get this metal hot instead of just welding it and do anything. So that was it's been a slippery slope ever since,
Yeah. Yeah. So you really, it's a never look back. Have you ever had another profession, like a full-on, jobs, I'm sure, but have you ever had a whole other career before you did this?
I've actually never really thought about it. Not really. It was always like, there was always the mission. There was always the goal. It's like, how do I do this forever? Mm-hmm. And also, how do I keep doing cooler and cooler things?
Yeah.
Because I think the biggest excitement for all of it was like, what am I capable of? I have no idea what I'm capable of.
Yeah. Yep. Well, in the early years, there are those times when you make something and you sit back and even if the quality of it or whatever is subpar or not there's those moments where you're like, I made that. That came from me, and
it's
that
usually pretty short-lived.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, good job, me.
Yeah.
But I can make it better.
Yeah.
What else can I do next time?
Yeah. And see, that's one of the things that I found out about you right away. You don't seem to stop in this cycle. And so as I was preparing for today, because we haven't talked in a few months,
miserable.
I've been thinking like, how do I boil down some of the long conversations that we've had? And your process is really, it's interesting. There's the external process and then there's this internal process, right? So, your childhood wasn't great. This became your outlet, right? And it seems like the minute you started slinging a hammer, you were like, this is it. You didn't try to do painting. You didn't try band. You didn't try anything else. It was just right down there. And
it's so funny because now that I'm like looking back at the last pretty much 30 years.
Yeah.
It's true. It's been just like, it's been so focused and like, what a privilege, like I didn't bounce from one to the next, but also a little bit limiting at the same time. And
sure.
Like that limitation was in a way subconsciously intentional.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if I just opened myself up to all matters of creation, I think that's looking into the unknowable, right?
Yeah.
Some Lovecraftian knowledge will ooze my brain up.
Yeah, it's too much. I always say, there's a reason why Michael Bay movies don't win film festivals. I mean, he has all the money in the world, and when you don't have a limitation on your creativity, it usually kind of doesn't turn out super awesome. Now, not saying all Michael Bay movies are crap, but what I am saying is he's universally known for making huge blockbusters, that make a ton of money, and he gets to do anything that he wants, and he makes the same movie over and over. So in the film world, we use this analogy a lot. Like, everybody will be like, well, I'm not going for the Michael Bay thing. It's more like, I got to focus. This has to be for a specific audience. You can't just make a big spectacle, right?
Just for spectacle's sake.
Yeah. And I feel the same way about, a lot of journeys we go on. You try to understand all of it. You just kind of wind up, I need limitations. My creativity is at its best when I'm limited, when I need someone to help me finish this particular piece. If I had everything and every tool and all the knowledge, I don't think what I would produce would be very good. I really don't.
It also can be very paralyzing.
Yeah.
You're just like, if I can just do anything, like, that's like, Damian, damn it, you're blowing my mind right now because
damn it, Damian. That was very Kirk. I love it.
Literally today, I'm like actually at a bit of a crux. Like, I was at the design table today, and some of my favorite clients give me a little bit of a guideline. Like, I'm currently working on, could turn into a large body of work, and they're like, no, just do your thing. Oh. Like, don't tell me that. Like, you're making me stare down the bottomless pit.
Yeah. That has always been my worst nightmare. In my version of the art world in film or whatever. If someone's like, just take this and you do what you think is best. It's a compliment because they love your body of work so much that they trust you. But I always come back and force limitations. Like, if the budget's not going to force the limitation and the time's not going to force it, then I need some form of structure, a ditch on each side, or I'm just all over the place.
There needs to be some kind of pressure.
Yeah.
And like, I'm a visual person. I don't know if you could tell.
Yeah. No, not at all.
It's like, if, I don't know, like, you're like, there's a bucket 10 feet away from you, and you have a kind of like a garden hose that's about half, kind of half poured out, right?
Yeah.
And like, if you're never going to get it to that bucket without a little bit of pressure and, a little bit of constraint, a little bit of guideline. Is
that yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think a lot of artists, we fight against limitations so much. If you're ever blessed enough to be in a place where you get that, most people are like, oh, that was awful. That was awful. I mean, you talk to some of the best actors in the world. They're wanting a strong director. They're wanting someone who's the Coen brothers don't let anybody change a single ounce of dialogue. No one gets to change their dialogue. And they're considered some of the best directors of all time, and actors love them more than anybody because they guide them. They give them these limitations, right?
Damian, I love these conversations with creatives and everyone's creative, by the way, just
Absolutely.
Good constructive, conversations, because you have such a different background, but it's so linear to mine at the same time. So you have such a cool perspective on things that I felt for so long. Right. And you just have the verbiage so much clearer than I do. It's like, this is great, man.
Yeah. Well, that's the joy of when you're having the right conversation with the right people. That's what my last podcast was talking about. The Tao Master, he was like, we're chasing energy. We're literally moving it. You're giving me an idea. It's processing through me. It's coming back to you. And it creates this life. Like, if you have these conversations, you feel understood and clear and inspired. Like, so often we're all somewhere in our workshop or whatever it is by ourselves, facing down demons on our own,
Absolutely.
And what's so funny is, if there should be any large community, it should be of artists and creatives, because we're so vulnerable. We're we're just too busy beating the crap out of ourselves because we're by ourselves.
And somehow we're like the most isolated people on the face of the planet. How is this? We just can't organize? What the hell?
Yeah. Well, organization's not always our greatest, you know. Well, so I want to keep coming back to this like linear, like you were just saying, but linear thought process. So you get into this thing. I mean, did you start out early days, early 20s making this kind of stuff, or was it more like functioning? Did it start like you're working construction kind of welding and then you worked your way into art, or did you just go right in?
It was kind of always this, or at least this was the plan. This was what I was where I was trying to get to. And you know, once you climb a mountain, then you get to see, oh gosh, there's a lot more mountains and they're higher too.
Yeah.
So, you know, you got to keep moving.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I did a lot of odd jobs to make this dream happen. You know, I'd work construction during the day. I'd come home and, you know, do as much as my body can handle at night. Yeah. There was never a plan, but it was always this direction.
Gotcha.
And wherever that took me was where I needed to go, or I went crazy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it seems like you are a person of just, this is what I'm doing. That's what it is. And I'm going to do that. You don't seem like somebody that really struggles. Now, not on the creative. I know there's multiple ideas. But in your life journey, from what I've known from you over the last year, it doesn't seem like you spend a lot of time wondering if you're on the right path.
Well, don't let me fool you.
All right, there we go.
Well, yeah, like definitely in my 20s, that was rough because, you know, I was dirt poor. I mean, not much has changed, right? But you know, like it's hard to struggle for so long and to work so hard and to not be receiving what you feel like you're entitled to. What a god awful thing. But you know,
I understand though. Yeah, you feel like you're earning it.
Not working. You know.
Yeah.
But like that would maybe last a day, maybe an evening. It usually happened around tax season where I'm like floundering and, you know. So.
Yeah.
But I'd always come back. It's like, no. I was born to do this. And if I quit now, I feel like I'm going to quit myself.
Wow.
You know?
Wow. That's a serious connection. So, I mean, to you, you're not messing around. This is as max as breathing or needing to sleep.
Well, and like there was, yes. In many words, yes. I had to be creative. I was one of those cursed people that was like, you know, it's either I focus my creativity or who knows what, you know.
Yeah.
So it was very important that I expressed myself, and the best way I knew how to was with metal, and I kept myself out of like bronze work, out of like casting. I kept myself out of, you know, silver or gold. You know, I made sure to keep myself very funneled, so that I didn't just truly bury myself in possibility. I wanted to just like focus.
Awesome.
And I'm glad I did.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many parallels that you can go, you know, in any field of study. You know, you're filmmaking now, you've got screenwriting, you've got cinematography, you've got editing, you've got music, that's why when you get around a real master that has been around so long, you know, you get around these Scorsese kind of guys who know all of that and the depth and the knowledge, but he got that by making something. He didn't get that by studying all of that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it seems like if I could go back to my early 20s, it seems like it would be solid advice to choose a medium and just master that medium. Stay straight on that medium as long as you can, and then keep going on it. Because if you become a real master with this, you can attract the masters in the other things that you're going to need.
Ooh. Oh, yeah.
Do you agree with that, or?
I totally agree. Well, it puts you into the right rooms.
That's right.
You know, it puts you in the right conversations, because like what really helped me, at least in my world, was getting in with interior designers. Starting to learn design, not from, you got a lot in books and things like that. Mm-hmm. But it was such a boon for me to meet an interior designer that got me into chandeliers and stuff. And then I was forced into learning electricity and electrical and structural engineering and stuff like that.
Right.
If you just start breaking through some of these barriers, all of a sudden things will start to make sense, and this kind of constellation web of all the things related to it start coming clearer.
Yes.
I love that.
It does. I mean, for me in Wonderment, I'm often asking myself how I'm in the room or how I'm talking to the people I'm talking to, because sometimes they're PhD child psychologists, and they published the work and all this kind of stuff. And before Wonderment, if I had just called them and said, hey, I'm curious, I want to talk to you about something, probably not going to happen, maybe, just depending. But now, because of me just committing to that path, and what's been said to me is, these folks can never do what I'm doing.
Right.
And I can't do what they're doing. So if everyone's just kind of, it's a little bit of a negative term, but if everybody's staying in their lane and their area of focus, but we all are coming together, now you've got this breadth of ability that I don't think I could go get all that. If I went back at 18 and started doing school and doing all that, I'd be a PhD, but I wouldn't have the life experience to do all the other stuff.
Well, and that's the beauty about community, man.
Yeah.
Because you can't know everything.
No.
And nor should we. How boring would that be?
Yeah.
If we were just echo chambers,
Yes. Right. Yeah.
No, you get to ask people questions. Asking questions. Oh my gosh. If you're if that's a skill anybody could just master, is just asking questions, good question.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing what you'll learn.
It is. It's a superpower.
It's a superpower.
And what I've always discovered is being humble enough to ask and transparent enough to ask usually has massive benefit. Rarely does someone take advantage of you asking, a question like that.
Damian, is so true.
Yeah.
What's so funny, because, speaking of state, I know it's a very negative term, but I'm trying to search my lexicon of a better term of stay in your lane, but specialized, right? Master one thing at a time. If you just jumped in and were a novice at everything, it's going to be a punishing experience.
Yes.
But I remember having such difficulty asking questions, because then I was like, oh, well, I can't possibly be perceived as ignorant. I can't. I got to be the best at everything. No, but also I feel like that diminishes after you kind of really start cultivating some real knowledge, some deep understanding of at least one or two good subjects. Then you don't feel the pressure of having to know everything. You got this.
Right. Yeah. Well, people say it's age. It's not actually age. It's the fact that, I have 3 children, so I have never been more aware of how ridiculous I sounded when I was lying to my parents. Every day I'm sitting here going, oh my God, that was so embarrassing. I really thought they were buying that, Yeah. Well, when we're young, we're pretending like we know everything because we're afraid to let all these people around us know that we don't. Well, they already know that, dude. They're pretty aware that you don't know what the hell you're doing. If you're even in the room, they already know that. There's something else about you that they're willing to have you there and to help. So
totally true.
It's a huge waste of time in your 20s and even early 30s to worry about that. Just lean into it. They already know.
They already know. God, you're so spot on. Now I'm reliving a lot of my own.
Yep.
Really
Same here.
Cringy moments.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, all those intern years or all those first job years where you're posturing and and all that, but that's part of the heart of that mentoring process, and I wrote this down to actually make sure I brought this up with you. You and I had touched on this in past conversations, but it feels like as the pendulum is shifting so crazy to technology with all the AI and all the things that are going on, it feels like I'm starting to see the beginning stages of going back to that understudy kind of approach to the arts and to the crafts. Yes, you can get every video you could ever want on YouTube for free. But learning from someone who's had to deal with the internal state while you're learning something, that's not going to be replaced by technology. That's not going to be. So what I'm getting at is I think we're about to have a revival of that old method where, you're going to work under somebody for 2 years. You're going to see how they run their business. You're going to see how they build things. You're going to see how they handle customers. I think we're going to come back to a little revival of that.
I love that. I absolutely love that. It's so funny you say this because I'm trying to figure out, because I'm trying to build a new shop and bring people in that keep wanting to do an apprenticeship. I was like, how does that even look in California of all places?
Right.
By law, labor laws are really tight, and I don't want to get anybody in a tight spot, especially myself.
Right.
And and there's definitely no place for like journeymanships, apprenticeship programs and things like that. So I'm trying to figure out how to navigate that, but I would love a renaissance of spoken word, hand to hand, like learning. That's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah. I think we're going to see it. And, unfortunately, there's so many good laws around that because it was all being taken advantage of for so long, where people would work for 3 years and not make a dime and all that. But now, as everything, I always talk about that pendulum. We go from this extreme to this extreme,
It's funny how that works.
It is. It's humans. But it seems in your work in particular, your work is so much of it is physical. So much of it is hands-on shaping, forming these things.
Yeah.
How else do people learn? Like, can somebody really learn to do something like what you do by just going from scratch and watching YouTube videos? I mean, doesn't there have to be someone at some point?
It's harder. It is harder. And here's the thing. Actually, if you're in the mood for like a little bit of a story, I would love to tell you a little bit, at least my perspective on the matter.
Yeah, please.
So I created through Patreon so it's not so chaotic. Like, so it'd be like a small few of a very like intimate learning.
Sure.
Because if I just did like a series on YouTube, it'd still be very kind of cold.
Right.
I'd just, post, and even if I was answering questions, it's not, like you said, it's not like you're in the shop with somebody.
Yeah.
So, I created this Patreon apprenticeship program, and it's just this like monthly cost. And, we talk theory once every month through Zoom. And then every month I give them like a new challenge, either it be a lesson, a tool to put in their toolbox, all that good stuff.
Very cool. Yeah.
And it's really fun. And I used to, so there's one individual, I'm going to call him out. I hope he sees this. His name is Robin. Hammertown Anvil is his handle. Okay. And he got inspired by the Valhalla doors. And he was like, I want to, he spent 30 years as a millwright. Very bright gentleman, knows how to fix just about anything. So he's like, I want to get into blacksmithing. So he was like my first apprentice, and he's still like diehard. And he built himself a shop. He started with me ground zero. Now he's got clients. He's building all sorts of cool stuff. Wow. Right now he's got this cool like bureau he's building somebody, like wine rack. And then there's like crazy cool like tree trunk, like coffee table. He's just kicking ass. He's doing great.
Dude, how cool.
And it was cool because he's never been able to be artistic before. This is like his first venture into art.
Yeah.
And here's kind of what the difference is, I feel like, between learning from like a highly edited YouTube video versus like in the workshop with somebody. And I realized it by getting a little lazy with my editing. So hear me out.
Yeah, no.
So my first videos of this lesson was like nice and sped up. It was like all ultra curated. I had like put in a little bit of music. I did a little bit of editing, right?
Sure.
So, but I didn't show my mistakes. Like when I all of a sudden I dropped the hammer and go and swear a little bit, pick it back up, and I lost my heat. I'm like, darn it. And then I got to put it back into the forge, and I didn't include any of that stuff. Now I do, because I feel like all of those little components is what's missing.
It's the humanity behind the learning.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you were able to go and be like, learn how to do frescoes. And, it wasn't just about the up close technique. It's about how I'm going to spend the next 100 hours washing these stinking brushes, how I'm going to be scraping these palettes. It's all of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. When my dad when my dad was always teaching me how to draw, he was an artist and painter. What I learned by watching him and learning from him was how many mistakes it took to get to the most basic shape. Like my dad would just, Damian, and he's a good old boy from North Carolina. So he's like, Damian, just watch, man. Don't ask questions, just watch. And he, erase all of it.
Yep.
Erase all of it. And I'm like, oh my God, Dad, just draw it. And I wanted, because what I had always seen growing up was his finished works.
Yep.
I hadn't seen how often I didn't see all the tricks and the tools. And this has always been my complaint, from the filmmaking side of, sterilized education, as I like to call it, to where it's like, I turn on and somebody's a master builder and they wrote this whole script in an afternoon, right? Well, I didn't see how many times they went to the bar depressed. I didn't see how many times they yelled at their wife and they're sleeping on the couch. Like all the humanities removed.
Yes.
So that we see them as something that we all think we're supposed to be. And it's all pretend. None of that is real. Everybody's smashing their hand. Yep. Everybody's forgetting where they put something. Everybody's mixing too many colors and now they got dookie brown and they got to start, like, everybody's doing that.
Dude, you're so on the money, but I mean, as always, Damian, like I shouldn't be surprised anymore, but
it's just fun, dude. I love talking with you.
Well, and like, you're so spot on, because imagine the judgment of yourself. And like, I've spent so much of that. Like, it's like, it's like, oh, well, he just did it in like 2 strokes. Like, what the hell's wrong with me? Should I even be doing this?
Yeah.
And now you're ultra judging yourself. Your inner critic is just having a song and dance show.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And one thing I was like try to like bring up to with my students is there's no such thing as failure. Like those eraser lines, those lines that your dad erased, that was part of the most important, parts of it. That's the groundwork. That's the foundation of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like my entire desk drawer is full of eraser shavings from today.
Yeah. Exactly. What my dad used to say is I'm calibrating. I'm calibrating. He was dialing it in, and I'm like, all right. And then, as I got older, I realized, he was doing all that freehand without looking at anything, I mean, so if you're only always just seeing the end product without seeing the process, which I won't go off on this, but that's, I think, a real social issue, is that we all go to Target and buy something. We're now so disconnected from process of creating anything, making anything.
Yeah.
This is a huge topic, whole other podcast.
We can get into that.
Oh yeah. But I think what's happened is now we're kind of anemic as creatives, because we're no longer seeing everything being made. We're no longer on the way to school. I'm going to walk past a guy shoeing horses.
Yep.
And then I'm going to walk past the wood mill. And then I'm going to walk past the market. And nowadays, I don't see anything ever being made.
No.
Other than TikTok dances in the middle of the street, right?
Well, and you bring up social media too, is like everything is all just this big finished product. You don't get to see all, like, now I'm like, how the heck do I get to show, how do I show that all of my processes to people? And I know a post like that wouldn't do well, but I think it would make people feel a lot better about being creative in general, because they're not like, oh, well, look at this guy. Why do I even want to try?
Right. Well, and I know, first of all, it's super interesting to understand that the algorithm is training us to be more and more synthetic.
Yes.
And is penalizing expressions of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a little too epic, but that's how I'll put it, that's what's happening, whether it's intentional or not.
It's true, though.
If you put a messy video out there, it's not going to perform as well as this super badass cut, like all of your videos. Your videos are fantastic.
Thanks, bro.
And I mean, they're so well done, and the music and your team and all the people that are involved. But if you would have like a 1-to-6 ratio. So you've got like 5 that are just polished, awesome. Hello, my friends. And it goes into the whole thing, right? I walk around the house impersonating you still.
No, you don't.
Oh, I do. Hello, my friends. But, and then have a 6th one that is just a shit show. I feel like it gives your audience like, oh, we're seeing behind the stage. We're seeing behind the curtain.
I would love to do that because like even just a stinking TikTok video, like I'll set up my phone just to like film up a piece of process, right? Like I'm up doing something and that camera will only be running for like maybe a minute or 2 until I finished what I was working on. Then I can go and stop it and then move on throughout my day. And then when I do a video, there's like 2 hours that I have to get down to 1 minute.
Mm-hmm. It's insane.
And it's really, and it's hard because like I'm trying to, tell people a story. Like I'm trying to, entertain folks. I'm trying to inspire folks. But at the same time, like this is something I'm having this realization live right now. I'm realizing that like it's becoming more and more daunting for people to. It's like I don't know. It's I'm in the center of like double Dutch, right? And they're going like a million times a second. As I'm I'm in the rhythm, right? I'm jumping. I'm like, yeah, come on in, and they're sitting there like,
whack. Right.
So, like, I need to show. Maybe I'll just post a 2-hour video on TikTok and just be like, yeah, it's unedited. Here you go.
Yeah. I think, knowing your audience from previous conversations, I don't know how you do it, but without you showing your mistakes, you do come across so humble and so we all know that you've had them. Does that make sense? Like, you're not like, starting every video like, oh, hello, like, welcome to my parlor. Like, you're very warm, you're very friendly, so I know that the audience knows that you hit your hand from time to time, to speak. But I do think just showing something from time to time that's just destroyed, you measured wrong, the model doesn't work when you do it. Like showing things that failed it's a super juice, man. It is
I need to work on that.
It pulls every creative out of the shadows.
Really?
So, well, imagine if I look and I see like our audience right now, hopefully if they followed instructions, they went and looked at your stuff, right? So imagine if we're looking at Valhalla doors, Hobbit doors, those badass chandeliers, the copper leaves that you shaped by hand and all. And then we cut to a piece of metal that you have and it's supposed to be ready and it's just wrecked. Or you cut an expensive piece of something, but it was too short. Or it's so jarring to go from beauty, turd that every artist on the planet goes, I freaking love this dude.
Oh,
I love this guy. You'll love it, man.
Okay, I'm going to take that to heart. Thank you, buddy.
Just try one and look at the comments.
I'm going to try that because I did make a foul up that gave me a pretty good mental spiral last night.
Okay. Oh, see? Boom.
It happened. And you know what? Like a little expose of that would do well for me, I feel like. Because as we talked about in the artist way, the shame of a mistake and and I feel like a lot of people can also relate where if I wasn't the best at something, right? It didn't matter what, but if I wasn't the best and I didn't make mistakes, I didn't deserve love kind of a thing. I know that's really dark.
Yeah.
But we kind of covered that a little bit. Yeah. And I don't want to bring guys down. I'm just saying it's still hard to show some vulnerability, some humanity,
Yeah.
It's a little tough. But
it's scary.
Yeah.
And like all those things, the minute you do it, then you'll become addicted to it. Like I remember, again, swinging from one end to the other. I remember going from so scared to ask for help, to talk to people, to let people know about my dyslexia or whatever it was, all the way over to oversharing. and like making people really uncomfortable, and I've had to kind of like, oh, balance, go figure.
Balance is good. Absolutely.
The first couple of times that I just took the risk and let people see the mistakes, the relief that I got from it was close to addicting. Like I'm telling you, out of my whole artist journey, my whole path, it's in the top 2 things that I ever did that just freed me up.
Okay.
And people just swarmed into my life because they're so comfortable because you're showing some of your mistakes.
Yeah.
When
I really this is really a bit of a revelation for me. I'm really enjoying this idea.
Good.
Because I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I don't make. I mean, I don't want to say like I don't ever make mistakes, but the amount I obsess and I remeasure 5 times
and all that.
Like it's kind of rare, and it's become rare, and I've noticed my learning curve has
shallow,
kind of, because
tapered off a little bit.
Yeah, because like one of my the things I try to repeat always to my students is there's no such thing as failure, right? Like how many things, how many tens of things did you learn when you burned that piece of steel? Right. How many things did you really, did you realize when all of a sudden, you drifted that steel too much and now all of a sudden your rivets didn't fit, but then you had to build new rivets a little bit bigger and then you like them 1,000 times better. Sometimes when everything goes to plan, you learned, well, that just works. Right. You learned one thing.
Right. Yeah. And I'm paranoid. Like when everything works and there wasn't an error, I'm like, then I didn't push the envelope or I didn't try something. Like, why did this happen without any error, without any mistakes? I actually,
zone.
I use that as a measurement. In my own experience, I was constantly trying to cast and find someone to play the wizard. I was supposed to be the one playing the wizard, and I spent 1.5 years trying to get other people to play this role.
Right.
And everything would work nice, but there was no risk. And as soon as I stepped into the risk, my favorite quote, you've heard me say it, is by Joseph Campbell. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek.
Man, I forgot about that one.
That's there's a new one. There's a new version of it kind of floating around. I've just heard it recently that the work you're avoiding holds the magic you're seeking. Same principle, right? Like turn to the thing that's making you paralyzed. Turn to the thing that has you scared. On that,
it's tough.
Do you mind if I ask you, and you can say no, and I can edit it out, and no one will ever know. Okay. But you just brought up something, being transparent and vulnerable. You were talking about having a spin out last night.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable to talk to us about that? Not just what it was, but what the thought process was?
Yeah, it was honestly a pretty easy little mix up. So I'm currently working on a garden gate. All right, nothing that should throw me into an absolute tailspin, but it did. So
good. This is great.
I've been trying to get these jobs up and moving. I've been in the design phase for so many different projects now. I'm like, someone needs to bite now, because I just got married, spent a bunch of money, spent a bunch of time off, which is honestly the most expensive thing. Yeah. And so I'm like, I need to pay my mortgage. I need to start getting one of these jobs moving. So I got that little bit of a pressure on me. So I spent, days, now weeks on the drafting table, and I draft up the environment. There's this cool like brick wall, and in the void, that's where I'm filling with this this garden gate, and it's a new relationship, a new professional relationship, a little hard to read so far. Usually I can really get the pulse of somebody, and I'm like, okay, I got them. I got the read on them. I know their creative style, right? There's a thumb on the hose. Now I'm like, okay, I'm hitting the bucket. I got a little bit of guidelines. Yeah. And I wasn't getting any of them. And then it turns out I spent all this time toiling over this design, and my ratios were off. I scribbled down my notes, the width and height of the entrance, and I reversed them. It's It's not catastrophic, but in my mind, my late night mind, it was.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I was like almost nonverbal. It broke my heart. I was like in a loop.
Yeah.
And it's so weird too, because I have tattoos on my arm to remind myself to like go back to the shadow, your angry thoughts,
yeah.
You're not serving me whatsoever. But I just was still stuck. And it finally, at last, I came out of it. But it's amazing, even though spending 30 years trying to learn yourself, trying to be gentle with yourself, it still takes all your strength to pull up on that stick, in your plane as it careens down,
100%. 100%.
Crazy.
Now, and again, this is all at your comfort, but we're now talking about showing your mistakes. We were talking about mistakes external. Now we're talking about your internal process, right? So when you figured that out, because that's a lot of work. Like you said, it's not detrimental, it's not end gamer, but there was a lot of work that went into that, right?
Yeah.
So what was the negative talk? Is it literally as simple as you're an idiot, or is it like reminding you of something? Like what's the shit?
Ooh, man, we're getting into it. Okay, let me think here.
If you want to share, because then I'm going to ask you how you came out of it.
It's interesting. Well, since it's such a new relationship, I've never done any work with them, so I'm not vetted, right?
Okay.
I don't have a working relationship with them yet. And if I'm going to come out with the first work they see of mine, stumbling over my feet, I'm not looking as good as I need to for that like, first introduction.
Sure.
And I think that's what I was really eating myself up about. And it's like, well, will they trust my real work? What if I flipped that measurement in real life and now it's steel? Right. Maybe it's now thousands of pounds of steel, and now it's junk. Yeah. And they've spent tens of thousands of dollars in just material on now just a giant hunk of junk.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel it right here. Yeah. Tension right here.
But then I was like, you know what? Maybe there would be something. What actually pulled me out of it, maybe there might be something into just like, hey guys, I'm juggling a lot of stuff right now. I goofed and make it funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and just be like, approach it like it's not a big deal. My ratios are just skewed a little bit. It was literally the difference between 59 and 53.
Wow.
So they were close. That's why I kind of reversed them.
Right.
But for me, that was like a nuclear bomb in my soul.
Yeah. And to people on the outside seeing that, it's like, I mean, that's not that big of a deal, right? Like, and I've had relationships where people try to help you by saying things like, well, it could have been worse. Right. Or like, oh, that's fine. And they're coming from a good place. But what they don't know is that it's kind of dismissing to just be like, hey, yeah, it could be worse. No, I'm freaking out right now. And just because it doesn't make sense to everyone else, it doesn't mean that I'm not freaking out.
And it's like totally irrational too. It's very difficult to ration with. It's like,
yes.
Well, I mean, gosh, it's so interesting because when we're talking the artist's way, we were talking about like that inner child, that inner, that inner creative, and you're almost resolved back to that. You're a little kid all of a sudden, and you're just this vulnerable little nugget.
Yep.
Yes. It's such a trip. I mean, this is perfect timing. Damian, you made perfect timing. It worked out perfect that I had a panic attack last night.
Good. Well, I know we've been going for a minute, but you have to let me show you something. I got to jump up. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back.
Do your thing.
Okay.
All right, he's back.
All right. So last night when you were having a panic attack, I did the exact same thing. And so I can't sit here and be like, oh, yeah, that's cool, and not tell you. So here's what I did, and I'll make it really quick. So I've been making this whole Muppet band, and we're supposed to be filming with this Muppet band. And the last thing that needs to be made is a drum set. I'm driving down the street the other day. Somebody had thrown out some drums. So I take one of the drums. This is going to be the bass, so it fits proportionally, right?
Nice.
They're a garage band, so we stickered it up and everything. So I was like, oh, I'm going to print the name of the band and put it right here. So it's supposed to look real simple. I print it, I go pick it up, I bring it home. I go to put it on there, and it's exactly too small. And I measured and measured and measured and measured. And so I have to go get my wife. It's always bad because I'm always like, Taylor, what did I get wrong with the numbers or whatever? And what I had done is I measured the inside of the circle instead of the outside of the circle. When she explained that to me, I called myself a term out loud that I won't even repeat because it's so ugly. And I went back to being 6th grade failing an art class.
Yeah.
Like that. And I've done Artist Way. I've done, dude, I've been around this block a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And I spun out and had to walk away. I'm like, all I have to do is remeasure and print it again. But it was a reflection on me.
Right.
And I did. I just had to kind of I don't mean this literally, but I do more of a Gen X approach, but I kind of make fun of myself.
Drink from the garden hose and make sure.
Yeah. Like, I'm like, okay, dude, I don't really think this is that big of a deal. You messed up your puppet drum set and you're going to have to fix it tomorrow. Yeah. But when we spin out, it gives us an opportunity to really understand things about ourselves. That's what I've learned from years of the Artist Way course is if I'm freaking out, I'm still pulling my self-worth from my work.
Yes.
Like that somehow made me feel like a freaking idiot. This piece of cardboard made a 49-year-old man feel like a freaking moron. And he cussed at himself and went down the hall and pouted.
Yeah.
I'm still getting my self-worth from my work.
Well, and it's fascinating, buddy. Like oh gosh. And you said it. And this is something I was hoping we'd actually come to today because I was thinking like, oh, what we might talk about, what we might cover. And I host a little funny thing called Tea Time. Tea Time we have every Sunday morning at like 10 o'clock. And it's so good. And we just like remind each other of like kind of just these creative lessons like that. And it's kind of come full circle for me that just because you heard it once, like we went to the Artist Way one time.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to hear 1,000 times to even let it sink in.
Yeah, you do. And I told you, I mean, I teach it once a year, every year for myself because come about 7-8 months, I'm like, oh, I need a refresher course on this, So you walked us through your mental state, right? But how did you get out of it? And I think you mentioned something, but was there something you did? Do you go for a walk? Do you punch a bag? What do you do?
There's a lot of different things that I've learned. I know like taking a shower will shock just my physical body, which will then kind of seep into, my mental self, right? My spiritual body. Doing something else productive, like cooking sometimes can help. I'm like, I totally messed up that measurement, but damn, this dinner slapped.
This mac and cheese is the shit.
Because I think a lot of it is that self-worth, that confident boost that you need in that moment, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, how can I do a little bit of damage control to tell myself I'm not a giant pile of crap?
Right. And you strike me as someone who wouldn't enjoy being I'm saying that wrong. You would not want to be non-productive. You strike me as someone who probably starts not feeling great if you're not being productive after a while. Is that?
Yeah. Like we've covered this a little bit in the past where it's like my productivity is my worth. You said it previously.
Yeah. So knowing that you were going to go in the shop the next day. So last night this happened, right? You're going to have to email the client, you're going to have to do and all that. To kind of bring this all together into what I said in the beginning, I really wanted people to get a good idea of who you are, what you do, what you're capable of, and then give us some of the things that you do to keep you with a sense of wonder. Because again, if the viewers have gone and seen your work, there's a lot of people that can do what you do, but they don't do it in this whimsical, magical, there's a vein that runs through your work. And I can't call it fantasy because that's not complete.
I hear that. Yeah.
I can't hang it on any one particular thing.
That's good.
There's moments that's right. So where does that whimsy magic come from?
Okay.
And why is it in everything you touch?
Dude, I love this question, buddy. Okay.
Right on.
Let me start from the beginning. So,
yes,
creating, little alternate worlds inside of my brain gave me kind of an addiction of the feeling of that, like, awe-inspiring kind of joy of just like, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. But I'm like seeing it in my mind. And then like all of my days are me actively trying to recreate that in real life because I want them to feel the same way. That sense of wonder, that sense of awe, and like, when and where am I right now? What is this? Where'd this come from? And the best is like, you can give that sense of wonder to kids. But my favorite is when like elders feel it as well. They've seen a lot of life. They've been on a lot of adventures. And for them to be shocked with a sense of like bewilderment is like the greatest thing. Was like, yes, you see it, you feel it too.
Well, to be able to cause that in somebody who has survived countless attacks and blows and trauma and memories, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
For them to feel that, that's like a master stroke in that, there's an amazing, go ahead.
Sorry. I just feel like we're at our best when we're feeling that way.
Yes. That's what I was about to say. There's a book, and I know you've got to remember, I listen to books. I don't read them really. I listen to books, but it's called The Science of Awe. And the whole time I was listening to it, I was like, Max needs to listen to this, dude.
I'm writing it down.
Here's the thing. It is scientific. The guy's a PhD. He runs a department at Berkeley, and they did a study on literally awe. And it's so much of things that you and I have talked about. It's real practical. Like, they classify the 8 types of awe, and some of it's literally just based on scale. And you and I have talked about that before. Like, you stand in front of the Grand Canyon, the ocean, there's a huge moon, or you stand in front of Valhalla doors that are super huge. Scale melts the brain for a second,
It does.
But you got to check that book out. And anybody listening to this, it's a quick listen. It's academic. It's not super entertaining, but the information is incredible.
I'm so into this. I'm going to probably start listening to it tomorrow.
Well, the author is the guy that worked with Pixar to create the Inside Out.
Oh, wow.
All the emotional aspects of it, that's what he did for Pixar. So you're going to love this guy.
I already know, man. If you're recommending me this, you couldn't steer me wrong if you tried.
You're going to love it. You're going to love it.
Yes. And like, because I feel like it reveals that inner child.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
it does.
Gosh, it's just the best. Because we lose that. We get so comfortable and so used to the environment around us. We're zombified. We're not present at all. We're just, thinking about, okay, what am I making for dinner? What's going on tomorrow?
The next thing.
Stressing about the meeting in a month,
Yeah.
And you're not present. And I think that's what I love so much about architectural ironwork, and especially doors, is they literally are portals.
That's true.
They're portals, and like, like makes people like look up from their shoes to like something new, something they weren't maybe expecting.
A new experience.
Oh, something new. And I'm addicted to trying to share that with people.
Yeah, dude, you're good at it. And it comes across in everything that you make, not just the really big pieces, but I mean, your bottle openers and in your videos and the way that you guys make your videos. There's a sense of just magic and awe, and that I think is what is drawing people to you. Now,
wow.
I think your art keeps them coming back, but there's a magic, there's an energetic thing that I think that people love about your work, man. It's just awesome,
buddy.
So,
and I'm excited for new ventures, because we were talking about like mastering something, getting something down to where like it's literally in your DNA now.
Yeah.
And then just saying yes to things like doing this podcast, you never know where this could take us.
Yeah, no, for sure.
It's really exciting. And who knows where this magic will take us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm glad that we get to share our journeys together, dude. I mean, we became quick friends and, we haven't talked in a few months because you're getting married and all that. But of course, the minute we talk, it's like no time has
100%
escaped us at all. So I want to be mindful of your time and, wrap this up a little bit. I do this thing where I ask each guest a question from somebody that I work with. So either a kid or an adult or something like that. So we're going to end on that. And here's the idea. I show the person like an idea of who you are and your work. And then I ask them if they have a question for you.
Okay.
So the question today from a 10-year-old. Let me get it. Hang on a second.
I'm excited for this.
Okay. How often do you hurt yourself, and have you ever hurt yourself so bad that you didn't want to continue?
Oh, that's a really, really good question. Luckily I have all of my fingers. I haven't hurt myself beyond being able to be able to produce. Because I think that's my greatest fear is I couldn't work. If I like lost a hand or, I had to fuse vertebrae in my back and I couldn't do the work anymore. I think that's my greatest fear. There's definitely been times where I completely rethought every decision I've ever made in my entire life. When you're feeling your finger and it's like a cartoon as it just goes boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah.
But I don't think there's a possible injury that would ever keep me from being creative and being excited to share my creativity with others and inspire others to be creative.
That's awesome. Great answer. Well, Max, I love you. I can't thank you enough for being on here, man. And, I want to reiterate something that you and I have always said. I say always, like we've known each other forever, but it feels like that.
We're kindred, man.
I know. Everybody's creative. Yes. You and I always use the spreadsheet term, creativity is how you're approaching something. It's not a special gift. You can approach anything creatively. And that can be a spreadsheet, that can be a piece of metal, that can be cardboard that you're cutting out the wrong size. Well, thank you, dude. And everybody, please, if you didn't do it in the beginning of this podcast, you got to go check out his work. Follow him on all of his socials. I'm going to put all the information down here.
Perfect.
Do you have any kind of anything that you're selling right now? Any products? I know every now and then you make little one-offs, but
yeah, and then I'll announce that in like all of the channels. Like I'll do a giveaway or a limited release or something like that. I'm selling like those bottle openers and of course merch.
Okay.
But yeah, cool. Nothing extensive right now. But
nothing crazy.
Keep in touch because I always love to be able to give back as much as I can.
Absolutely. All right, buddy. We'll give my best to Casey, and I will talk to you soon, man.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me on, buddy.
You bet.